A Gina attorney drops an Instagram story featuring a coffee cup and a single crown emoji. Exactly 12 hours later, Remy Ma's manager posts a corner of a contract, intentionally hiding the text behind 3 diamond emojis. Then, 50 Cent delivers the ultimate public anchor sentence on his timeline. When the deal is right, the talent comes home. Allegedly, this is one of the biggest corporate hijacks in urban music history, locked into place publicly across just 3 social media posts, without a single formal press release. But the digital paper trail isn't even the most explosive fact of this timeline. The ultimate shockwave is how independent mogul Papoose found out his own wife was entering a multi-million-dollar buyout. It wasn't through a professional courtesy call, it wasn't from a label executive, and it wasn't from his wife. Industry observers noticed that Papoose learned of the entire negotiation through a random fan account's DM, containing a screenshot of the manager's story and a 3-syllable caption of absolute pity. Bro, you good? Supporters believe this transition has been quietly in motion since last summer, when Remy was suddenly removed from her regular podcast appearances under the corporate label of working on her own thing. But behind the scenes, the reality is far more ruthless. Today, you will discover the exact 3 parameters built into this alleged unit contract, including a multi-episode docuseries co-produced by Genius Film and the BMF production family, alongside a lethal publishing buyout clause designed to reduce Win Records Network's market valuation to 0 overnight. Prepare yourself, because whether the ink is officially on the paper or not, the checkmate move has already been played. To understand why this development sent shockwaves through the independent landscape, you have to look past the surface-level internet gossip and look directly at the alleged contract parameters. This is not a standard joint venture marketing deal. According to public discussion, the paperwork slid across that Manhattan desk represents a total corporate relocation. Industry observers notice that the fine print does not create a partnership between G-Unit and Papoose's independent imprint, Win Records. Instead, it creates a completely autonomous ecosystem designed to operate entirely outside of his jurisdiction. The first structural pillar of this alleged offer is the creation of a brand new, standalone vertical inside the G-Unit infrastructure, built completely around Remy Ma's name, likeness, and creative catalog. Behind the scenes, the mechanics of this layer are highly aggressive. This structure reportedly grants Remy her own independent marketing budget, her own dedicated creative team, and her own autonomous A&R desk. In plain economic terms, it elevates her from an artist on an independent roster to the chief executive officer of her own major distributed division. For an independent label like Win Records, which relied heavily on Remy Ma as its primary flagship asset, this represents a massive operational bypass. The leverage shifts even further with the second documented parameter of the deal. The alleged offer includes a multi-episode documentary television series, co-produced by Genius Film and Television in a direct partnership with the BMF production family. This is a critical development because 50 Cent's corporate gravity relies heavily on broadcast television and premium streaming contracts to turn music artists into global household brands. Critics argue that this television vertical creates a level of exposure that no independent urban label in 2026 can match. The consequence of this layer is absolute. It places Remy Ma on global red carpets, premium streaming networks, and international press junkets, all managed by an ecosystem that Papoose holds 0 keys to. But the third layer is what industry insiders consider the ultimate structural dagger. The contract allegedly contains an explicit publishing and management exit clause. In real-world business terms, this means that whatever residual interest, administration rights, or future booking percentages Win Records Network held in Remy Ma's brand will be completely bought out, settled, or quietly extinguished upon the signing of the contract. Supporters believe this clause is simply standard practice for a major corporate entity cleanup before investing millions into a brand. However, from an asset valuation perspective, this clause effectively strips Papoose of every professional title he held in relation to her career, leaving him legally removed as her manager, her label boss, and her executive producer. The immediate business consequence of these 3 combined layers stretches far beyond personal relationship tension. If these publishing and management exit parameters close, the valuation of Win Records Network collapses overnight. In the modern music industry, An independent label's net worth is tied directly to the future exploitation rights of its biggest catalogs. Removing Remy Ma's likeness, future masters, and publishing rights turns a functioning independent network into a paper empire. Industry observers notice that without its flagship star, the label's primary remaining asset is essentially just a logo on a wall and historic catalog data. Public reaction to these technical parameters has been cold and analytical. Across major urban hip-hop forums and digital media platforms, the audience narrative has rapidly shifted away from standard relationship drama and toward corporate strategy. The prevailing sentiment across 40 different digital platforms has monolithic clarity, with viewers repeatedly stating, "Let her eat, let her get her empire." The public imagination has already finalized the separation of the brand, viewing the move not as a personal betrayal, but as a mandatory career ascension that any rational executive would accept. This public consensus highlights the most brutal rule of the entertainment industry. Perception is the only currency that dictates market leverage. The moment these operational layers became public discussion, the structural foundation of Papoose's independent empire was devalued in the eyes of distributors and investors. Even if negotiations are still in the verbal phase, the mere blueprint of a G-Unit vertical that leaves no room for Win Records forces Papoose into a defensive posture. It exposes a harsh reality where corporate gravity can completely absorb an asset without ever firing a shot in a courtroom. Every new detail uncovered in this corporate blueprint points to a meticulously planned corporate ambush rather than a spontaneous record deal. The architecture of the contract was designed to ensure that when the ink finally dries, the transition is seamless, absolute, and leaves no legal vulnerabilities for the acquiring giant. The industry chessboard was set long before the public saw the pieces move, and as the corporate details settled into the public square, all eyes turned directly to the timeline to watch how an independent executive responds when a professional leverage vanishes in plain view. The corporate architecture of a multi-million-dollar contract means nothing without a strategic rollout, and in the modern entertainment landscape, power players don't use traditional press releases to claim victory. They use digital breadcrumbs. Behind the scenes, the timeline reveals that the industry elite were signaling this transition days before the public caught on. Industry observers noticed a highly calculated, sequential dropping of digital clues that proved the inner circle was already celebrating. It was a masterclass in silent leverage, executed right under the nose of an unsuspecting independent executive. The first digital receipt materialized from the corporate camp itself. A top-tier attorney, legendary within hip-hop circles for structuring G-Unit's most high-stakes multi-vertical distribution deals since the early 2000s, uploaded a single image to his Instagram story. It was nothing more than a coffee cup. No geotag, no written caption, and no artist tags. But resting right above the image was a single emoji, an empress crown. To the casual scroller, it was a meaningless morning post. To industry insiders who track legal representation, it was a definitive flag planted in the ground, signaling that a rap queen was officially entering the building. Exactly 12 hours after the attorney's post, the narrative advanced from the artist's camp. Remy Ma's longtime personal manager stepped onto timeline to drop the next piece of evidence. The post featured a physical contract resting on a desk, but the text lines were intentionally obscured. The only visible element was the stark, white edge of the signature block. Accompanying the image was a caption containing 0 words, just 3 diamond emojis. Supporters believe this was a deliberate tactic to build independent bargaining leverage. Critics argue it was a public declaration that the management camp had already checked out of their previous independent obligations and crossed over to a larger playing field. The third and final anchor of this digital trail dropped 48 hours later, coming straight from the executive suite. 50 Cent utilized his massive platform to deliver a single chilling sentence to his timeline without any accompanying photos, music clips, or promotional tags. When the deal is right, the talent comes home. The phrase carried historical weight, referencing a long-standing industry narrative of reclamation and dominance. By framing the acquisition as a homecoming, the G-Unit boss effectively stripped the independent competition of their narrative authority, signaling to the entire market that the contracts were drawn, the terms were set, and the alignment was complete. The alignment becomes even more calculated when you align these public receipts with a deeper timeline analysis. This move was not an overnight impulse. Industry observers noticed that this transition has been quietly operating in the background since last summer. It was during that window that Remy Ma was suddenly and completely removed from her high-profile, regular podcast appearances. When fans and media outlets questioned the sudden absence, the official statement from her camp was a highly polished corporate line. She is currently working on her own thing. Behind the scenes, that phrase serves as classic industry code for an active non-disclosure agreement during a major contract renegotiation. While her independent label was projecting normalcy, her team was allegedly sitting in off-grid corporate meetings. Those meetings reportedly took place in exclusive, low-profile Manhattan establishments, restaurants chosen specifically because they lack an aggressive social media presence and cater to clients who pay in cash to ensure no digital transaction trail exists. Throughout the early months of the year, G-Unit film executives and Remy Ma's management team allegedly conducted a series of quiet dinners to map out the television docuseries parameters. The consequence of these off-the-grid strategy sessions was a complete isolation of Win Records' network. By the time the general public noticed a single emoji on a timeline, the legal foundation, broadcasting budgets, and corporate structures had already been finalized in private rooms. The execution of this digital rollout highlights a brutal reality about the modern attention economy. The industry speaks in a highly precise language of emojis and subtext, and if you aren't at the table, you are forced to read the room from the outside. The sequential dropping of the crown, the diamonds, and the landing sentence was designed to build a wall of public perception that completely boxed out the independent husband. It created a corporate gravity so intense that it forced the entire hip-hop community to accept the transition as a done deal before an official press release could even be typed. But just when the industry thought this corporate poaching was simply a high-level battle of wits between rival executives, a leaked operational detail surfaced that completely shattered the corporate veneer of the story. The casual observer believed this was a standard, clean, multi-million-dollar transition, discussed entirely inside the clean confines of a boardroom. But a breakdown of the physical logistics behind the contract's delivery reveals that this corporate ambush wasn't just designed to acquire a flagship artist. It was structured to completely blindside the husband in a way that left him utterly defenseless in front of millions of scrolling eyes. This is where the corporate ambush meets public reality. The true climax of the situation is not the contract itself, but the immediate forensic fallout on the timeline. Publicly documented data reveals that the moment the digital receipts dropped, a 40-hour psychological reaction sequence began. The definitive peak of this public crisis materialized at hour 26. Papoose initiated a dimly lit Instagram live stream from what critics argue was a non-residential, hotel-style room. For 47 minutes, the independent executive spoke entirely about the concept of loyalty and how the industry forgets. Yet, industry observers clocked a massive omission. He did not mention his wife, the G-Unit deal, or 50 Cent a single time. The factual consequence of this timeline is absolute market devaluation. In 2026, entertainment leverage is dictated by perception. Online theories are currently split. Supporters argue this entire sequence is highly coordinated theater to drum up multi-million-dollar pre-release buzz for an upcoming project. But critics counter that even if this is manufactured marketing, the damage to Win Records is already done. By remaining completely silent on the specific logistics of his flagship asset's departure, the public square has already written Papoose out of the corporate narrative, proving that an empire can be dismantled in the public imagination without a single dollar ever being spent in a courtroom. As it stands right now, the pieces on the board have settled into a stark public reality. Remy Ma's management has signaled a major corporate alignment, while Papoose's independent Win Records network has been forced into a high-stakes defensive posture on the timeline. But beneath the surface of this corporate takeover lies a massive unresolved mystery that the industry is still trying to decode. Are we witnessing a brutal, real-world corporate checkmate designed by 50 Cent to dismantle a rival's independent asset value overnight? Or is this a masterfully choreographed marketing stunt designed by both camps to manipulate public perception and force Remy Ma back into the multi-million-dollar mainstream spotlight? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Is this a real business divorce, or is it pure industry theater? Let's get the velocity up and debate this in the stadium below. If you want to stay locked into the hidden logistics behind the biggest power moves in urban culture, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. We track the receipts so you don't miss a single floor of the building.